One of the many things I love about my role here at Grace is that I do get to travel a decent amount, visiting our partners, our church plants, leading short-term trips around the world. And everywhere I travel, I love to run and explore the area. So I've had some epic runs in the hills around Chichicastenango, Guatemala, or the Karura Forest in Nairobi, Kenya, or the Land of a Thousand Hills in South Africa, along the River Thames in London, England, the Blue Mountains in Sydney, Australia, Nanaimo, British Columbia, Moscow, New Delhi. There's nothing like exploring a city early in the morning on foot to really get a feel for it. Okay, let's stop right there. It's a little bit crazy, a little weird, a little out there. And I know you already know where we're going today and for this series about our physical bodies. And I know some of you are already tempted to potentially roll your eyes. And as Chris said, maybe even doubt whether you should have even come here this morning or not. Here's what I'm not going to do. I promise you. I'm not going to tell you to be like me. I hope that this sermon series is not just one big, giant guilt trip for you. Let me tell you 2 lessons that I've learned from running over the years. Every race that I've run in, and I've run in a few, I've never ceased to be amazed at the different body types I see and at what point in the race. I'll be running along toward the end of a race, and all of a sudden an old woman will shuffle past me, and I'll be like, what? An overweight man will effortlessly blow past me, or someone really tall or super short, or someone with a very awkward running style, old people, young people, people dressed up in strange outfits, even Forrest Gump one time passed me. Seriously, everyone around me shouting, "Run, Forrest, run!" Here's what I've learned. Everyone has a different body type and a different ability, and that's perfectly okay. Expect it, celebrate it, don't judge it. And that leads me to my second lesson. I've tried to qualify for the Boston Marathon for the last 6, 7, 8 years now. And so far, all I've done is fail. Haven't done it. In order to qualify, you have to run a certain time. In every race I've tried to qualify, I haven't run fast enough to qualify for the Boston Marathon. I was running in a race up in South Bend a couple years ago, again trying to qualify, and it was a miserably hot and humid day. It's about halfway through the race. Did I mention it was miserable? It was a miserable day. And I was running next to another guy, and we started talking, and he mentioned that he had run Boston earlier that year for the 3rd time. Just a little pang of jealousy. And I said I had also been trying to qualify but hadn't made it yet. And he looked at me, gave me a once-over, and without skipping a beat said, you might have a chance if you lost 10 pounds. Really? And then he sped away. Here's my second lesson. Be careful what you say to people because things stick. Which leads me to start a sermon on physical fitness, on health, on wellness in this way, that God made us all different. Praise God. We have different body types, different abilities, different metabolisms, different shapes, different sizes, and that's okay. In fact, that's the way it's supposed to be. We're not the same. Thank God for diversity and creativity. I'm me, and you're not, and you're you, and I'm not. Let's celebrate each other and each of our uniquenesses and not force each other to conform to a certain ideal of what someone has deemed perfection. God made perfection in our diversity and not in our sameness. I also need to start with one big caveat. I know that All of us are in different and unique life situations. I have a friend here at Grace who is struggling with cancer right now, and that has resulted in a very painful condition in her feet and has caused her to not be able to walk for exercise, even though she would like to. I have a friend here who's older and is confined to a wheelchair. I have another friend who suffers from a very painful arthritic condition and makes exercise almost impossible for her to do. I have another friend at Grace who's a mom whose husband recently left her, and she's left with trying to make a new career after 25 years of not being in the workforce and finding herself trying to find a place to live that she can afford, take care of her kids. Our life situations, your life situation, may make it almost impossible to implement what I'm going to be talking about this morning. Almost impossible. But don't tune me out. Though only a few of us may go to the extreme of a whole body makeover as a result of today and this series, everyone can do something different. Everyone. And so here's my big idea. Our physical bodies are a gift from God that He intends us to take care of so we can live life to the fullest and bring our best to His mission. Let me start with that idea that our physical bodies are a gift from God, because I believe that there are some of us here today that have a really hard time believing that statement. One of the impacts of the culture in which we live is the confusing message about our physical bodies. What am I supposed to look like? What am I supposed to feel and think about my own physical body? Our relationship with our physical body is characterized by a whole range of emotions, all the way from hatred to an unhealthy pride, even idolatry. How do you feel about your own body? Do you go past the mirror at the gym and say, dang, I look good? Or do you avoid mirrors at all costs? I know some of you struggle with believing that your physical body is a gift from God because you've told me that. Some of you have been subject to bullying simply because you look different. Some of you have been on the receiving end of awful comments about your height or your size or the color of your skin. Some of you have struggled with a physically debilitating illness, and for all of those reasons and more, we have a hard time believing that this, our physical body, is a gift from God. Let me simply remind us of what God says about our bodies. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27 says, "So God created human beings in His own image. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them." And then later in verse 31, "Then God looked over all He had made, and He saw that it was very good." Not only are you created in the image of God, but God looks at you and calls you very good. When was the last time someone looked at you and said, very good? And look at what happens as a result in the next chapter, the end of that chapter 2, verse 25 in Genesis. "Now the man and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame." Those of you who have felt shame about your body, can you even imagine what it would be like to feel no shame? That was God's intent, because He looks at you and says, very good. And then we turn to Psalm 139, verses 13 and 14, where it says, "You made all of the delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it." God's creation of our physical bodies, His workmanship, is marvelous. Think about it. It's so complicated, so amazing, so miraculous, it would take several years of hour-long lectures to detail just simply a fraction of what it is that God made you to be in our bodies. God's workmanship in you is marvelous. And then there's Ephesians 2, verse 10. For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus so that we can do good things he has planned for us long ago. That masterpiece is not limited to your mind or to your soul or to generically you. It includes our physical bodies. You, including your body, are not just a masterpiece, you are God's masterpiece. And finally, just for good measure, 1 Corinthians 3, verse 16 says, don't you realize that all of you together are the temple of God and that the Spirit of God lives in you? It's unbelievable. Unbelievable if you think about the precision of the temple. All of the chapters of the Old Testament detailing the specifications of the temple so that it would be worthy of housing God himself. And now, through Jesus Christ, we are that temple. Our physical body is that temple. God deems your physical body worthy of housing himself because he made it worthy. Our bodies are not something to be ashamed of. If you feel like that, if you're ashamed of your body, it's worth taking the time and the effort to address that feeling and that belief because God says the opposite. Your body is something to celebrate, a masterpiece that God calls very good, that he designed as a gift to this world. Our physical bodies are a gift from God, and the diversity and variety of the physical bodies represented here this morning is part of that design. It's part of that gift. Work on accepting who you are, who God created you uniquely to be. The goal of this sermon series is not for all of us to suddenly look like a Kenyan marathon runner. No, that's not the point. The goal is for you to be you, the healthiest version of you. My wife, Rosalind, is famous for saying two things can be true at the same time. Those of you that know her know she says that when we're confronted with two realities that seem to contradict each other and yet both are true. And here's where I'm going to say two things are true at the same time. Work on accepting who you are in your unique physical body. And do all you can to care for who you are in that unique physical body. Your physical body is not a resource to be used up. It's a gift to be treasured. This is a hard topic, physical fitness. Walking a fine line between acceptance and stewardship and not falling off on either side of shame and guilt or the other side of obsession and judgment. And I'll be honest, I don't know how hard it is for some people. I don't know how hard it is for some of you. Because God gave me a body with a relatively high metabolism rate, which has resulted in me being relatively thin. But I do know people, and I know some very well, including my wife, who gave me permission to say this, where it is an intense, personal struggle and has been for the vast majority of her life. So, Grace Church, I ask you, how can we together grow as a family? How can we take better care of our physical bodies so that we can live life to the fullest and bring our best to his mission? What would it take to mobilize and motivate us, Grace Church, into healthier lifestyles for the sake of kingdom impact? So let's get really practical. about our bodies. How do we improve our physical health? And I want to propose 4 different ideas today. First, find your why. What's your motivation to improving your physical health? I want to help you identify that motivation, that why. Because whenever a person is faced with a difficult task, it's so much easier to accomplish that task if you know the reason behind it, the why, of you doing that task in the first place. When it comes to improving physical health, we usually don't look much beyond the obvious reasons of losing weight, looking good for the summer. And I won't say those reasons are wrong, but I'd like to press you beyond those initial motivations to something possibly deeper. Back in the early 1970s, when my dad was in his early 30s during one of his annual physicals, his doctor warned him that with his current lifestyle, he was not going to see his youngest child, me, graduate from high school. He had a history of heart disease in his family. He was overweight. He was overstressed. He listened. And he set a goal of not only seeing me graduate from high school, but seeing me graduate from college as well. And so he and my mom set about radically changing our family's lifestyle because of his why, his motivation, and that became the foundation of a better life of health and fitness for him. It included regular exercise and a completely changed diet. And let me tell you, I suffered as a result. Through weekly meals of steamed vegetables. To this day, I do not like steamed vegetables, especially squash that's soggy. Even worse, oven-baked scrod. No offense, Mom, who I know who is listening online today. That was just not a very good fish. I mean, let's talk alone about the name, scrod. But let me tell you, it was all worth it. My dad did pretty well with his motivation and his goal. He's now 80 years old, and we hope in 3 years he will see his youngest grandchild graduate from high school. His motivation lived so that he could be a father and a grandfather for a long time. And thank you, Dad. I like to think that the Apostle Paul was a runner. He wrote a lot about running as a metaphor, and I had a lot of his quotes on my walls in high school, in college, because I was a track and cross-country runner. And one of those passages in particular shows what I believe was Paul's motivation for his own physical health. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 24 through 27 says, "Don't you realize that in a race everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize? So run to win. All athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will fade away, but we do it for an eternal prize. So I run with purpose in every step. I'm not just shadowboxing. I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself might be disqualified." Paul found his why. He wanted an eternal prize and not to be disqualified from the race. If Paul was not simply using an extended metaphor, but had some basis of reality in his own life, that he was disciplined and rigorously training his own physical body, he wanted to have integrity in what he preached and be able to focus all of his attention on achieving the mission of God. Barry preached a very similar motivation for physical health back in January last year when he said, "I want to be as healthy as possible for as long as possible so God can use me to change the world." My motivation is very similar to Barry's. When I think about my why, I want to be fully alert to what life has for me, working full-time for God's kingdom with plenty of energy all day long until a day in the far, far, far distant future. What is your why? I asked some friends around here at Grace who have been on a recent journey toward improved physical health, what was their motivation? Kevin said his motivation was found on, unbelievably, a Grace trip to Haiti, when a little Haitian boy poked a finger in his 330-pound frame and asked, why? Lloyd said, I wanted to live to see my kids get married and have children of their own. Lloyd said, I just said Lloyd. Sorry. Jan said, I've struggled with my weight for most of my life, and as I'm getting older, notice more fatigue, pain, and inability to do the things I want to do and that I feel God is calling me to do. Brooke said, I felt a strong sense of responsibility to take care of the body that God gave me so that I would be around to watch my children grow up. What's your motivation? I want you to be able to answer that for yourself. Step 1, find your why. And then number 2, educate yourself. My wife, Rosalind, and I had a night out 3 months ago, big night out, McAllister's, spared no expense. We were having a deep, honest conversation about our life. We're in the midst of huge transitions with all 3 of our children. Our family and home is looking very different, and all too soon, it'll just be Roz and me left alone in our home. Roz gave me permission to say this, by the way. She was telling me some of her frustration with her health and with her weight, and she wanted to be willing to do something differently. And we gave each other permission to do something differently together to get us unstuck. I did something that I do sometimes when I'm stuck, and I found a book to read. It's really a simple book, but it got us unstuck. The book is called The Daniel Plan, written by Rick Warren, pastor in California, and it really helped. The book title and inspiration comes from the story of Daniel in the Bible, where the young man Daniel is brought into the king's service, but refuses to eat the king's rich food and drink, and instead throws down a challenge that if the king will let Daniel and his friends eat only vegetables and drink only water for 10 days, wait and see if he and his friends would not look better and healthier than the rest of the king's servants. And of course, at the end of the 10 days, they did. Now, I'm not going to ask us all to eat only vegetables and drink only water over this next month or 3 months or 6 months. In fact, the book, The Daniel Plan, doesn't even say that's exactly what we're supposed to do. Nor do I agree with everything in this book. Of course not. There are about 1 million books and blogs and plans out there right now written at this point regarding fitness and health and nutrition. But I do believe that the Daniel Plan has a healthy balance of mind and body and spirit, which is what we're going to be talking about this month. It combines the elements of motivation and community and practice, and it bases the whole plan on faith. And quite simply, it's worked for many, many people, including us. Based on the book, we decided to make a few simple changes to the way we shopped, the way that we cook, the way that we eat. We cleaned out our pantry of almost all of our processed, packaged foods, which about killed me because I'm a little bit of a miser when it comes to money. We started buying mostly vegetables, fruits, nuts, quinoa, eggs, avocados, lots of avocados, and stocked our fridge with many, many salads. After these 3 months, food is somehow tasting different. It's tasting better. Maybe I would even like that steamed squash now, Mom. Who knows? We've both lost weight. We feel more energetic. And honestly, I wish we would have done it a long time ago. The Daniel plan for us got us unstuck. So when I say step 2, educate yourself, it doesn't have to be the Daniel plan, but if you're looking for somewhere to start, that's what I'd recommend. And so we do have copies in our bookstore. You can buy it on our online bookstore or through the normal way that you buy books. I really believe it can be helpful. So find your why, educate yourself, and then third, choose a big challenge. One of the most effective ways of improving physical health is to set a very concrete goal. Something that can capture your imagination, harness all of your energy, stretch you beyond what you thought possible, and when achieved, become the foundation of confidence in approaching your future regarding your health and fitness in a whole new way. Edwin A. Locke was the pioneer researcher in SMART goal setting and motivation. SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound goals. Locke found that after reviewing decades worth of laboratory and field studies on the effect of goal setting and performance, he found that 90% of the time, 90%, specific and challenging goals led to higher performance than easy goals, or just do your best goals, or generic goals. Two of the most spiritually fulfilling experiences of my life were running down Michigan Avenue on the 25th mile of my first marathon, the Chicago Marathon, and when I was finishing mile 211 of the John Muir Trail in the Sierras of California, approaching the summit of Mount Whitney, the highest mountain in the continental United States. Both times, I was in tears, overwhelmed with a sense of praise to God and awe at how He had created my body with the unbelievable capacity to do things I didn't think possible. Now, you may not have the desire to hike the John Muir Trail or to run the Chicago Marathon, but what could be a goal for you? Challenging, specific, worthy. It may not need to be the thing, but what could be something? Something that would be difficult, something you've toyed with but never committed to, something possibly surprising, even shocking to your spouse or to your friends. How many miles could you walk this summer? What fitness class could you join? What about trying a triathlon, where you have to swim and bike and run all in the same race? Or what about cycling, trying to cycle more than to the park or to Dairy Queen this summer, but trying to do 25 or 50 or even 100 miles in one day? What about a half marathon or a full marathon? Just how crazy might you get? Who's to say that you can't do it? I asked my same friends another question about their goals, and Brooke said, I ran a 5-kilometer race at a 10-minute per mile pace in April of 2016. I had never even run an entire mile in my life before training for this race. I also wanted to be able to do push-ups on my toes. You go, Brooke. That's awesome. Lloyd said, my goal was to get under the type 2 diabetes line. I wanted my blood sugar levels and A1C to come down to a safe level. Once the weight started to drop off, I set a secondary goal of finishing a half marathon, and he did it. Way to go, Lloyd. That is awesome. Our bodies are more remarkable than we can imagine. Setting a goal that captures your imagination, that's where you can start. So 3 steps so far. Find your why, educate yourself, choose a big challenge. And fourth, don't do it alone. I didn't realize it at the time, but one of the most significant parts of the conversation between me and Rosalind at our McAllister's dinner 3 months ago was me saying to her, I was willing for us to make these changes together. That made Roz feel that she wasn't in it alone. I didn't realize, but it was the gift of being in it together that was most meaningful. What do we say around here? God designed us to be in community and not be isolated. Call it accountability, call it encouragement, call it community, fellowship, a buddy program, coaching, workout group, fitness class, membership, whatever. Research says there's one thing, one simple step for goal achievement that can increase your chance of success by 85%. And that one thing is accountability. To set yourself up for success, make sure your goals are shared and supported. I have a running partner. We've been running together for 10 years, more? Not sure, we've lost count. He's become one of my best friends. We challenge each other, encourage each other, keep each other accountable. We talk through our whole run each week, 6 miles at a time. We've shared funny stories, hard stories, struggles, fears, questions, concerns, hopes, prayers. I really can't believe that we haven't run out of things to say week after week after week for 10 years in a row, but we haven't. He was the reason I was able to run and finish my first marathon. And I can't tell you the number of times that at the end of a run, we'll turn to each other and say, wow, that would have really been difficult without you this morning. Who will you ask to join you? Your grace group could go through the Daniel plan together. Your family could have a goal and do something different together. What could that be? Jim said, my wife and I did not set out to change our lifestyle in regards to eating and walking, although that's what's needed to happen to achieve permanent results. We eat better foods, smaller portions, except watermelon, he said. We love watermelon. And we really enjoy and look forward to our morning walks. What started out as 20-minute walks became daily 1-hour morning walks where we could really have time to discuss life and grow closer together. I don't want you to be alone on this journey. So we as a church are going to do something unique in the next 5 months, over the next 5 months, and invite you to participate in one of 5 groups through Grace where we're working towards a big goal together. We'll have a walking group called the Grace Soul Patrol. Going to have fitness classes, a Grace triathlon team, a Grace cycling team, a Grace running team. I know that's all a lot. We explain it all on a landing page on our website, and so you'll be able to go there and find out how you can join one of those 5 groups to train together. The Grace Triathlon team is going to train for the Muncie Man Triathlon in September. I mean, how awesome would that be for you to finish and complete your first triathlon? Be incredible. The Grace cycling team is going to join a Grace ministry called Conquest Cycling. By the way, an amazing ministry that started here at Grace to cycle and serve for His glory. And they want cyclists of all abilities this summer to train together for a ride in Carmel in September called the Gran Fondo. What if you rode 100 miles that day, something that you could never imagine possible sitting here this morning? And then, yours truly is going to unabashedly invite every single Grace person sitting here today to join me and Team World Vision to train for the monumental half marathon and marathon in November this year and run for clean water for Africa. And I particularly want people to join me who have never run a half marathon before in their life or a marathon before in their life. Maybe you haven't even considered even thinking about doing that before in your life. Join me. I'd love 200 people from Grace to join me to train together this summer to accomplish an outlandish goal. And remember, all shapes, all sizes, all ages accepted. My bottom line hope for us as a church is that we would be able to live life to the fullest. You are a masterpiece. And I invite you into a life of increased physical health and vigor and vitality, because your physical body is a gift from God that He intends us to take care of so that we can live life to the fullest and bring our best to His mission. Let's pray. God, I simply want to pray this morning that you would speak to us each individually. I don't want this to be my words. I don't want this to be a spouse's words or a parent's words. I want this to be your word to us, whatever it is between you and each person sitting here. Whether it's a word of encouragement, a word spoken in love that's needed to be heard, whether it's a challenge to us. I pray that you'll speak that to each of us here and that we can hear what you have for us. And I pray that because I know how much you love each person sitting here. I thank you for that. You are the God of love. You're the God that cares for us. And so I can pray that with confidence. In Jesus' name, amen.